Listen closely, because what I'm about to say is not for the faint-hearted. This is a call to the ones who thought they had control, the ones who wield power without mercy, the ones who decide the fate of others with a cold hand and a harder heart. To you who believe that cutting off another's path is a victory, pause and understand the weight of what you have done. You just closed their future. You left them in the dark. But what you did was far beyond revenge. It was the quiet extinguishing of possibility, the deliberate ending of a story that was still being written. And the echoes of that act will haunt you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Look around you. There are those whose eyes once burned with dreams, now dimmed to shadows. They stood with hope, raw and unpolished, vulnerable but fierce. And you came in with calculated steps, a decisive blow, an irrevocable choice, and severed the thread that tied them to their own becoming. That future, rich with potential, swirling with unknown victories and defeats, has been slammed shut. A door that once creaked open with possibility now hangs locked and silent behind a wall of your making. Understand this. What you call justice, what you brand as revenge, is nothing compared to the gravity of what happens when you snuff out a life's light before it truly shines. Revenge is temporary, fleeting, a moment's satisfaction. But when you close someone's future, you are playing God in the darkest sense. You are deciding not just the outcome of a moment, but the entirety of what could have been. The dreams erased, the contributions lost, the transformations denied. Imagine the silence you have imposed, the quiet where vibrant voices once rose, the blank space where stories should have flourished, the darkness where hope once danced like a flame against the wind. That silence is not empty. It is loud with regret, with pain, with the absence of everything left undone. There is a monstrous power in this act, one that you may have underestimated. It is a power that corrupts the soul of the wielder as much as it destroys the spirit of the victim. When you close the door on someone else's future, you bind yourself in chains too, because the energy you poured into destruction is energy taken from creation, from growth, from connection. You turn your own heart colder, your own mind darker. But here is what you must know. In the shadows you cast, in the dark you left others to drown in, there is a flicker, faint but unyielding. That flicker is defiance. That flicker is the ember of a future not yet lost. You may have closed one door, but the human spirit is cunning and relentless. It will search, claw, fight to break through the walls you have built. You think you have extinguished their light, but you have only pushed it underground, where it burns hotter, fiercer, ready to explode back into the world when least expected. Those you left in darkness will learn to navigate by their pain, their scars becoming maps. They will forge weapons out of their suffering, armor from their shattered hopes. They will walk through the abyss and return transformed, no longer broken but forged anew. You cannot contain the hunger for life that comes from being stripped of it. So, listen carefully to the lesson that your actions teach. What you did was beyond revenge, beyond hatred, beyond the petty scales of justice humans cling to. You tampered with the very essence of existence, the right to become, to grow, to rise. And in doing so, you created a void that nothing can fill but the fierce, unbreakable will to reclaim what was lost. You wanted to bury futures, but you planted seeds of rebellion. You thought you ended a story, but you sparked a fire that will write new chapters, unwritten, unpredictable, unstoppable. Your act of darkness will be answered by the brightest light born from the deepest shadows. Remember this: closing a door does not kill the journey. It merely forces the traveler to find another path, one not visible to the eye, but blazing within the soul. What you call defeat is the seed of victory for those you thought you had silenced. They will rise, not despite your actions, but because of them. And as they rise, you will watch the consequences of what you unleashed. Because you didn't just close a future, you challenged the infinite resilience of the human spirit. You tested the boundaries of despair, and in the process, forged a new kind of strength. So when you look back, remember, what you did was not just revenge. It was a turning point, a moment where darkness met defiance, and defiance will always find a way to pierce through the night. You think power lies in the ability to crush, to silence, to erase. But true power is never found in destruction alone. It is forged in the aftermath, in what rises from the rubble you leave behind. And when you close their future, you are not just ending their dreams. You are setting a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down into the depths of their very being. The darkness you left them in is a crucible, a place where only the fiercest forge a new purpose from despair. They will carry the weight you imposed, yes, but that weight will not break them. It will be the fire in their veins, the thunder in their hearts that propels them forward. You see, the future you closed was not a static thing. It was a living force, pulsating with possibility, bleeding potential into every moment. And when you slammed the door shut, you thought the force died. But the truth is that energy does not vanish. It becomes something else, sharper, darker, more determined. It seeps into the soul like a poison, and that poison either kills or transforms. And in many cases, the ones you left in the dark will transform. They will harness the bitterness, the rage, the loss, and turn it into an unrelenting drive. You may think the silence you imposed is a sign of victory, but listen to the sound beneath it, the pounding heartbeat of survival, the quiet breath of rebellion, the slow, inevitable gathering of strength. Every time they stumble, every time they fall, they rise with more fire. Because when you take away the light, some do nothing but stumble into oblivion, but others build torches from the very fragments of their shattered hopes. And this is what scares you most, isn't it? That the very act you took to suppress them will be the spark that sets them free. That the darkness you gave them will become the darkness they master. The cruelty you showed will be the steel they temper their will against. Your action was not just a final blow. It was the ignition of a war inside their souls. A war that will not end until they reclaim everything you tried to steal, and more. But don't mistake this for a call to mercy or forgiveness. This is no soft plea. This is a reckoning. Because you who closed their future must understand, every action has its price, and the cost of what you have done will echo far beyond the moment. It will shape destinies you cannot imagine, ripple through lives you don't know, and haunt your conscience in quiet, insidious ways. You have not just denied someone their future. You have invited a reckoning that time itself will struggle to forget. When you look into the eyes of those you left behind, do you see the darkness you imposed? Or do you see the fire beginning to glow beneath the surface? Because make no mistake, the greatest power you have is not the power to destroy, but the power to awaken. And by closing their future, you have awakened something you cannot control. There will be nights when they lie awake, staring into the void you made, feeling the weight of everything lost, But those nights will also birth resolve, the kind of resolve that is cold, calculating, and patient. The resolve that waits, plans, and strikes back with precision. Revenge, you might say. No, this is beyond revenge. This is survival. This is transformation. This is the slow, steady climb from the bottom of the abyss back to the summit. You have left them in the dark, but darkness is not emptiness. Darkness is a place of unseen strength, a forge for the unseen warriors. And those warriors will return. Not broken, not defeated, but sharpened and stronger than ever before. Your act, meant to end them, will only make them more dangerous. Do you understand what you have done? You have created a force that feeds on loss, that thrives in shadow, that knows no limits. You have taken a soul and pushed it to the edge, and in doing so, you have unleashed the hunger to survive, to fight, to conquer. That hunger is unstoppable. So when you feel the cold silence around you, when you realize the futures you closed are not silent but roaring, when you see the flames rising from the darkness, remember that what you did was beyond revenge. You played a hand in a game far bigger than you imagined. You tested the limits of despair and set in motion a force that will not be silenced. If you thought you were the victor, think again. Because true victory lies not in crushing futures, but in forging unbreakable spirits. And those you left in the dark will be the ones to teach you that lesson. Through their rise, their roar, their unyielding refusal to be forgotten, they will become legends born from ashes, warriors shaped by shadows, creators inspired by loss. And the future you closed, it will be reborn, not as a faint memory, but as a blazing inferno that consumes every doubt, every fear, every attempt to suppress it again. This is not a tale of endings. It is a story of beginnings, brutal, raw, relentless beginnings. And if you listen closely, you will hear the sound of the future breaking through the darkness you tried to trap it in. It is the sound of life itself, refusing to be silenced. Remember this, what you did was beyond revenge. It was a catalyst, a challenge, a war cry echoing in the void. And no matter how deep the darkness, no matter how final the closure, the human spirit will always find its way back into the light, stronger, fiercer, and unstoppable. There is a silence that follows the closing of a future, a hollow quiet that seems to swallow everything whole. But do not be deceived by this silence. It is not empty. It is thick with unsaid words, unfulfilled dreams, and broken promises. The silence is a cage, yes. But within that cage beats a heart that refuses to stop. It pulses with the memory of everything lost, every hope crushed beneath your hand, every opportunity erased in an instant. And from this silence rises something darker, something more potent than any act of revenge, a force born from the void you created, a force that will haunt your every thought. You have turned the wheel of fate with a heavy hand. You have stamped out a future with cold certainty, believing it to be the final act. But the truth is, every end you impose is merely a new beginning cloaked in shadow. You've trapped them in darkness, but darkness is fertile ground for the seeds of rebellion, the roots of transformation. It forces one to dig deeper, to reach beyond the visible, to fight harder than ever before. The future you crushed is not dead. It is buried beneath layers of pain, waiting to rise again, more formidable, more relentless, and more unyielding than before. Consider what it means to close someone's future. It is a theft not just of time, but of identity. You do not merely erase their tomorrow, you rob them of their chance to evolve, to grow, to find meaning. You shackle the soul to a past they cannot change and deny the possibility of what they might become. And in doing so, you create a wound so deep that it bleeds into every corner of their existence. But this wound, terrible as it is, becomes a wellspring of raw energy, a furnace where the broken are reforged into something unbreakable. What you did was beyond revenge. It was an act of profound violence against potential, a deliberate severing of life's promise. And yet, within this act lies a paradox, because to destroy a future is to awaken the fiercest instinct of survival, the instinct to claw, to scrape, to rise from the ashes no matter the cost. It is a hunger that cannot be fed with comfort or ease. It is a hunger born of loss, sharpened by grief, and driven by an insatiable desire to reclaim what was stolen. They who have been cast into this darkness are not simply victims. They are warriors of the unseen, fighters in the shadows who will use every ounce of pain and every memory of betrayal as fuel for their rise. They will learn to navigate a world that turned its back on them, to thrive in places where others see only despair, and in their journey, they will become unrecognizable, not as broken spirits, but as legends forged through fire. You must understand the ripple effect of your actions. The future you closed was not an isolated thread. It was a part of a vast tapestry woven from countless lives, hopes, and dreams. When you cut that thread, you unravel a piece of the fabric itself. The consequences stretch far beyond the individual. They touch families, communities, generations. You do not just steal a future, you fracture the very foundation of what could have been, and in that fracture lies a chaotic energy waiting to explode. And explode it will. Because nothing in this world is more resilient than a soul pushed to the brink. When all doors are closed, when all light seems to vanish, the human spirit does not surrender quietly. It screams in the dark, a primal roar that shakes the foundations of despair. It becomes a force of nature, unstoppable and relentless, rising from the depths with a vengeance not born of revenge, but of survival. You may think your actions were final, absolute, but the future is not a line to be cut. It is a circle, ever turning, ever evolving. Closing one door only forces another to open, somewhere unseen, somewhere unexpected. The darkness you left others to drown in will be the very ground from which their greatest strength grows. It is the weight that will forge their wings, the fire that will light their path through the night. So remember this, what you did was not merely revenge. It was a challenge issued to the universe itself. You declared that futures can be closed, that hope can be crushed, that dreams can be ended. But the universe responds not with silence, but with fury, with resistance, with the unstoppable force of those you sought to destroy, rising from the ashes of your cruelty. The shadows you cast were not the end. They were the beginning of a new kind of fight, a fight where pain becomes power, where loss becomes fuel, and where every closed door is just another step toward a horizon blazing with possibility. You may have left them in the dark, but the darkest nights birth the brightest stars, and those stars will burn so fiercely that their light will blind anyone who dared to extinguish it. Your act was beyond revenge. It was a catalyst for transformation. And transformation, no matter how dark the journey, is the purest form of power. So as you stand in the silence you created, know this: the future you closed will rise again, unstoppable, unyielding, and unbroken. Because the human spirit is not something you can simply end. It is a storm, a wildfire, a force that no darkness can contain. And in every soul you left in the dark, there burns an unquenchable light that will one day burn brighter than anything you have ever known. What you did was beyond revenge. It wasn't a simple act of retaliation or even justice. It was an assault on possibility itself. You reached into the future of someone else's life and twisted it until it snapped, like a fragile branch underfoot. But you must understand, snapping a branch does not kill the tree. It forces the roots to grow deeper, the trunk to become stronger, the branches to reach farther. You may have shattered the surface, but the foundation remains, waiting for the storm to pass so it can rise again, wiser, tougher, and more resolute. Think of the darkness you left behind. Darkness isn't just absence. It's a canvas for rebirth. It is where stars are born, where life creeps back in when the sun sets, and where strength grows in ways daylight never could reveal. You left them in this dark, believing it was a tomb. But darkness is not a tomb. It is a proving ground. The coldest nights bring the sharpest clarity. The deepest shadows reveal the brightest truths. In this darkness, what you destroyed becomes fuel for a fury unlike anything you can imagine. It's not the anger of petty revenge. It is the rage of existence itself, raw and unfiltered, demanding to be heard and reckoned with. Every dream you crushed becomes a whisper in the mind, a persistent call that refuses to be silenced. Every future you closed is a challenge etched into the soul, to fight, to survive, and to rise. And rise they will, for there is a force in humanity that cannot be contained. It is the unyielding will to continue, to create, to reclaim. You thought you had the final word, but the final word is never spoken by the one who strikes. It is spoken by the one who endures, the one who stumbles in the darkness but refuses to stay down, the one who hears the door slam shut and finds another window, another crack, another way to escape the cage you built. This is the brutal truth of what you have done. You have created not victims, but warriors. You have forged resilience in the furnace of your cruelty. You have carved strength out of the bone-deep wounds you inflicted. Every person you left in the dark is a story waiting to explode into light, a story of survival, of defiance, of rebirth. And those stories will be louder, stronger, and more powerful than anything you imagined. The future you closed was not a simple timeline. It was a symphony of possibilities, a constellation of paths, a garden of dreams. When you destroyed one path, the others do not vanish. They twist, they turn, they grow in unexpected directions. The garden may have been trampled, but the seeds remain, buried deep beneath the dirt, waiting for rain and fire to awaken them. So, what you did was beyond revenge. It was a war on potential, on dreams, on hope. But what you failed to grasp is that hope is not so easily destroyed. It is not a fragile thing. It is a force that feeds on adversity, grows in hardship, and shines brightest in the darkest hours. It is the ember that refuses to die, the flame that fights the wind, the light that guides the lost home. And so, the futures you close will find a way to open again. They will break through walls, shatter chains, and cross the boundaries you set. They will become legends, not because you wanted them to fail, but because you tried to stop them and underestimated the unbreakable nature of the human spirit. You have left them in the dark, but remember, darkness is only temporary. The dawn always comes, and when it does, those you tried to bury will rise with a fire so fierce, it will burn through every shadow you cast. Their stories will be told, not as tales of defeat, but as epics of victory over despair. So, if you ever wonder about the consequences of what you did, Look not at the silence you imposed, but at the storm you ignited. What you did was beyond revenge. It was the beginning of a reckoning, and the reckoning will be relentless, because in the end, no darkness is so complete that it can hold back the light forever. No future is so closed that it cannot be reopened by the hands of those brave enough to fight for it. No spirit is so broken that it cannot be made whole again through courage, through resilience, through the unshakable will to live. What you did was beyond revenge. It was an awakening, and awakenings, once stirred, cannot be undone. So, as you stand in the silence you created, know this: the futures you closed are not gone.